Jeff, you're the chairman of the U.S. Jobs Council. You're making a number of recommendations. We're having a hard time getting the jobs back, or is this the new normal for the next 5 years? What does the evolution of the economy look like, and is it something that the president needs to get more actively involved in, or is this something that is more organic in what's happening as a system?
You know, so Mark, my observation is that the U.S. economy gets a little bit better every day. You know, it was a deep recession, some structural challenges. We still have a big structural deficit that we have to manage, but gets, you know, just slowly a little bit better, and that's unnerving because people want it to be faster, and they want to see more jobs created. You know, 8.1% unemployment can never be the new normal. It's just not acceptable, right? And I think that's clear. Government doesn't create jobs. I don't think anybody in the Jobs Council really believes that the government creates to create the structure and the tone on which entrepreneurs can create jobs. That's the goal. So to that end, you know, what we try to do on the Jobs Council is just give common sense suggestions. So I would say training. There's almost 2 million open jobs today that go unfilled because we don't have enough welders, we don't have enough engineers. So training is something that the private sector can do, but the public sector can also help. Fast growth companies like Salesforce.com, that's what we need. You are, you know, the engine really of the most jobs being created. So we got to take as many things out of the way of high growth companies as we can. Regulatory simplification. You know, no CEO likes regulations. Count me on that list, right? I'm just like, but we're going to need regulations. We need standards. But it shouldn't be that there are 6 or 7 agencies that get to view every standard, and it shouldn't take 10 years to get a transmission line approved across state lines. That's BS. So there needs to be more accountability. Is that infrastructure creates jobs, and that the government has a big role in the infrastructure. Our infrastructure is not what it is. Those are the 4 things. Now number 5, and never underestimate this, is tone. Tone. Close your eyes any night and say, I just listened to candidate X speak, or candidate Y speak, and I'm an entrepreneur in Missouri. Did that speech motivate me to build my factory tomorrow? If the answer is yes, then they're on mission. If the answer is no, then they're not on mission. The tone has to improve in this country. We ought to say, everybody ought to stand up and say, it's safe to invest, it's time to invest. The future's going to be better than the past. Now's the time to go. You know, in our world, we're a high-tech, long-cycle business. I'm going to keep investing. I don't care about the fiscal cliff or anything else. We're going to keep going. But the tone in the country is not where it needs to be. There's blame for it to go around. And that, I'd say, above and beyond anything else I could give you that was wonky policy, is what's got to change.
I couldn't agree more with Jeff. I travel all over this country, and I see businesses, I see trade associations, I go to universities. There's such great optimism and confidence out in the countryside. You see it here in this room and all the people who are watching this by remote. But you don't see that in our political halls of power. You see a polarization that is worse than anything I've seen in my 40 years of public life. And people say, well, you know, there's an election coming. Let me tell you something. Barack Obama is a Superman, and Mitt Romney is a Superman. But we need a super people who will start examining these issues and not just listening to everything. Businesses create jobs. And the jobs that have gone are not necessarily coming back. We've got to create new jobs. We've got to go up the ladder of sophistication. And as Jeff pointed out, I would add a sixth one, we better start educating our kids for the jobs that we're going to do.
You know, again, business, let's face it, people don't like us that much these days, right? They like you, probably not me, but you got a lot of people that like you here, so that's, but...
What's not to like?
Price reduction?
My mother's here, she definitely would.
You know, people like their companies. You know, we've had a bunch of GE folks out here today. They like their company. People who work at Salesforce.com, they like their company. You know, when I go see our aircraft engines being manufactured, the guys on the line, they like their company, right? The engineers, the salespeople, the folks in the factory, the people that invest in the engine, they're not on different teams. You know, they don't say, well, I'm in the 47% or the 99% or the 1% or the 20% or I make $200,000, so I'm in the 32%. They want to make engines, they want to beat our competitors, they want to satisfy our customers, they want to work together doing it. And I think that's the spirit that exists in the business community. And I just think there's a lot of cash on the sidelines. I actually think American business leaders got better during the crisis. The economy's going to take, you know, look, this is not going to be an instantaneous recovery. But I just think if we can make the tone better things will happen.
You know, when we think about these future jobs, you're talking the next generation's economies, especially here in the United States. There's an opportunity for a new energy economy. There's an opportunity for a new manufacturing economy, especially with robots. We see some pretty big changes that are happening in manufacturing jobs. Where do you see this next uplift in terms of jobs? Where are the investments that you're making? And I know you have a new solar panel plant here in the U.S. and you see a lot of actual next-gen energy, batteries, things happening. Where do you see the next generation of jobs?
So I'll just piggyback on the two you mentioned. I think this is a country that could be energy independent in a decade. This actually doesn't get covered.
Actually, Tony Robbins is here, and he was co-hosting or substituting for Pierce Morgan on Sunday night. He had an energy entrepreneur on, T. Boone Pickens. He said exactly the same thing. We should take a goal. It's kind of like a moonshot type goal. Yeah. That within a decade, we are an energy independent nation.
Look, I think, Mark, I've looked at 100,000 business problems in my lifetime. I've been around a while. This is imminently solved. We sit on top of more natural gas than you can imagine. We've got some of the best wind corridors in the world. We've got a renewable portfolio that's strong. We've got great colleges and universities. This is imminently fixable, I would say. And then I think manufacturing, look, our company has always believed in manufacturing. Manufacturing has gone from 25% of the workforce, really when I started GE, nationally, to 9% today. I think we can get it back up in the teens. Some of it will come from Silicon Valley, additive manufacturing and things like that, and some of it's just, you know, reflection of what's possible with better methods. You know, we in our toughest business, and we make basically high-tech stuff, but we're still in the appliance business. We basically moved all the production of our appliances back to Kentucky from Mexico and China and other places around the world. Now, you know, I don't do that because I run a charity, right? I do that because I think we can do it here and make more money. The people do lean manufacturing. We can make appliances in shorter cycle time than we ever could before. So I think a combination of the new manufacturing technologies, additive manufacturing, 3D printing, stuff like that, plus better labor management relationships are going to open up another era of competitiveness for the United States.
So do you see that as also in terms of an opportunity for productivity Is that something that you would coach CEOs to start to focus in that area?
In two ways. First, I think people, there was these books that were written that said every economy goes from a farming economy to a manufacturing economy to a service economy. Nobody in China ever read that book. Right? Their book said, get as much manufacturing as you can. So we kind of looked down our nose at manufacturing for a generation. So what I would say is, I think owning your own supply chain is a big deal. It's a huge competitive advantage. And for us today, Mark, I think the era of inexpensive labor is basically over. Today it's all about markets. Today when we go outside the United States, it's because we've got to be in Saudi, we've got to be in Algeria. But I think if you're working the right way, that gets homogenized very quickly. And it's more about being in front of your customer, having short cycle times, better speed, better flexibility. That's who wins. So people that are out there just chasing what they view as today's low-cost labor, that's yesterday's playbook.
And do you see that as a major global trend in terms of?
I completely do. No, I think that's, I see it every day, and again, I think it's, in some ways that's going to be good for the United States. In some way that will mean that we have to be even more competitive for the future. So it's not all great news, but I do definitely think that's where you got to be, close to your customer.